Love x Revenge presents a story where fate, grief, and passion collide beneath the burning skies of the Wild West, where every secret has a price and every heart carries a scar. The wind swept across the prairie like a restless ghost, tugging at the tall grass and whispering through the wooden beams of the ranch. Caleb Hart stood beside the corral, his weathered hands resting on the fence as he watched his horse drink from the trough. The animal was more than a companion, it was the last living piece of the life he had lost. 2 years had passed since the death of his wife, Eleanor, yet her absence still felt heavier than any chain. That night, the moon rose pale and distant, casting silver shadows across the land. Caleb was about to turn back toward the house when he noticed something unusual near the stable. At first, he thought it was just a bundle of cloth left behind by one of the ranch hands. But as he stepped closer, he saw a figure lying beside his horse, curled against its warm flank like someone seeking shelter from the cold. His hand instinctively moved toward the revolver at his waist, but he hesitated. The figure stirred. It was a woman. Her dress was dusty and torn at the hem, her hair tangled with dirt and straw. She looked exhausted, as though the road itself had carved its cruelty into her bones. Caleb cleared his throat, his voice low and cautious. "Ma'am." Her eyes fluttered open slowly. They were dark, deep, and filled with something that looked like fear and memory combined. For a moment, she stared at him as if trying to decide whether he was real. "I didn't mean to trespass," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was so tired. I didn't know where else to go." Caleb felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen many travelers in his life, but something about her presence felt different. He offered his hand, helping her to her feet. "You'll catch cold out here," he said gently. "Come inside. You can rest." She hesitated, glancing toward the horizon as if expecting someone to appear out of the darkness. Then she nodded. Inside the ranch house, the fire crackled softly, casting warm light over the worn wooden walls. Caleb poured her a cup of water and placed it in her hands. She drank slowly, her fingers shaking. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lydia," she replied after a pause. He nodded. "I'm Caleb." Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them. Caleb felt a strange sensation, as though he had seen her before, though he knew he hadn't. "You're welcome to stay the night," he said. "There's a spare room." "Thank you," Lydia murmured. As she walked toward the hallway, she paused at the doorframe. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something more. Then she looked back at him, her expression suddenly distant. "Eleanor," she whispered. The word hit Caleb like a gunshot. He froze. The fire crackled louder, but he could hear nothing except his own heartbeat. Eleanor, his late wife's name. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice rough. Lydia turned slowly, confusion crossing her face. I don't know. It just slipped out." Caleb stared at her, searching her eyes for mockery or deceit, but he found none. Only weariness and something that looked like sorrow. "That was my wife's name," he said quietly. Lydia's gaze dropped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "It's fine," he interrupted, though it was anything but. That night, Caleb lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling while memories clawed at his mind. Eleanor's laughter, her gentle voice, the way she used to call his name across the fields. How could a stranger know her name? The next morning, Lydia was already awake, standing outside near the corral. She watched Caleb's horse with quiet fascination, running her hand along its mane. "You handle animals like someone who's been around them before," Caleb said as he approached. "My husband used to own horses," Lydia replied softly. Her words carried weight, and Caleb sensed there was more behind them. "You said, used to," he noted. She nodded slowly. "He died." The silence that followed was heavy. Caleb understood that silence all too well. "If you don't mind me asking," he said carefully, "how did you end up out here alone?" Lydia hesitated, then looked toward the distant hills. "My husband was killed in a land dispute. After that, the town I lived in wasn't safe anymore. People started blaming me, saying I brought bad luck. So I left." Caleb clenched his jaw. The West was cruel, especially to those who had no one to protect them. "You can stay here for a while," he said. "No one will bother you on my land." Lydia looked at him with surprise. Why would you do that for me? Caleb didn't answer immediately. He wasn't sure himself. Maybe it was kindness. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe it was the strange feeling that fate had brought her to his doorstep. Days turned into weeks. Lydia helped around the ranch, cooking meals, tending to the garden, and mending torn clothes. The ranch hands grew fond of her, and slowly, laughter returned to the house that had once felt like a tomb. Yet something about Lydia remained mysterious. Sometimes, Caleb would catch her staring at Eleanor's old belongings, the embroidered shawl, the faded photograph on the mantel, as if she were trying to piece together a story she already knew. One evening, a storm rolled across the plains, thunder shaking the windows. Lydia sat by the fire, her hands clasped tightly together. Caleb noticed her trembling. "Storms scare you?" he asked. She nodded. "The night my husband died, there was a storm like this." Caleb sat beside her, the space between them filled with unspoken emotions. The lightning flashed, illuminating her face, and for a brief moment, he saw Eleanor in her features, the same softness around the eyes, the same quiet strength. "You ever feel like the past doesn't want to let go of you?" Lydia asked suddenly. "All the time," Caleb replied. She turned to him, her gaze intense. "What if the past isn't gone? What if it's just waiting for the right moment to come back?" Her words sent a chill down his spine. A few days later, trouble arrived at the ranch. A group of men rode in, their faces hard and unforgiving. Their leader dismounted, his eyes scanning the property until they landed on Lydia. "There she is," he sneered. "The widow who ran away." Lydia stepped back instinctively. Caleb moved in front of her, his hand resting on his gun. "She's under my protection," he said firmly. The man laughed. "Protection? You don't even know who she is, rancher. Her husband died because he crossed the wrong people. And she knows more than she pretends." Lydia's eyes widened, but she said nothing. "Leave," Caleb commanded, "before things get ugly." After a tense moment, the men mounted their horses and rode away, but the threat they left behind lingered in the air. That night, Lydia confessed the truth. "My husband wasn't just a farmer," she said, her voice trembling. "He was trying to expose a group of powerful men who were stealing land and killing anyone who resisted. I helped him gather evidence. When he died, I knew they'd come for me." Caleb listened silently, his expression unreadable. "You could have told me," he said finally. "I was afraid you'd send me away," she whispered. He looked at her for a long time, then sighed. "This ranch has already lost enough ghosts. I'm not sending you anywhere." Tears welled in Lydia's eyes. That night, something changed between them. Their shared grief, their shared fear, and their shared loneliness began to weave into something deeper. Slowly, cautiously, they grew closer. Yet the shadow of Eleanor never fully left Caleb's heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lydia spoke again of Eleanor. "She must have been an extraordinary woman," she said softly. Caleb nodded. "She was." Lydia looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Do you ever feel like she's still here, watching you?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. The wind carried the scent of dust and wildflowers across the land. "Sometimes," he admitted. Lydia lowered her gaze. "I don't want to replace her." "You're not," Caleb said quietly. "You're something new." She looked up at him, surprised. Weeks later, the men who had threatened Lydia returned, this time with violence in their hearts. Gunshots echoed across the ranch, chaos breaking the silence of the plains. Caleb fought fiercely, protecting his home and the woman he had come to care for. In the end, the attackers were driven away, leaving behind dust and fear. After the battle, Lydia stood beside Caleb, her hands shaking. "They'll come back," she said. "Maybe," Caleb replied. "But next time, we'll be ready." She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lydia reached out and touched Caleb's hand. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly. "But I know I don't want to face it alone anymore." Caleb looked at her, seeing not a replacement for Eleanor, but a wounded soul seeking light in the darkness, just as he was.